The Art of Magic the Gathering is a tool for understanding the way of the Planeswalker and the design of the game. So we can use it as a guide to learn how we should handle different matchups. Because our role and strategy depends not only on our own deck, but also depends on our opponent's deck and the cards we draw. So, what are these roles? Well, there is three main roles: Aggressor, Delayer, and Assembler. And depending on the matchup and the cards players draw, we split these roles with our opponent. The player who can set up their strategy the fastest will be the Aggressor. Being an aggressor means you immediately put your opponent into a defensive position. That means you have to finish the game as fast as possible. Because most likely their slower strategy has a bigger hitting power. Many decks can be the aggressor depending on the matchup. But if you wanna make sure that you always get the aggressor role, playing aggro decks like Mono-Red or Gruul Province will make sure that you can set up your strategy faster than your opponent. Both of them will play creatures like Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger, but chooses different ways to boost them by either relying on Leyline of Resonance, which you can play it for 0 mana if it is in your opening hand, or use Innkeeper's Talent to slowly but surely grow and protect your threats. Yet I have to warn you, if your opponent can find the answers they need for your strategy, you may not come back from that. So maybe you should consider taking the Delayer role instead. Being a Delayer means you are in it for the long run. Since your strategy can turn every opportunity into small advantages, eventually your opponent will crumble under the pressure of that accumulated resources. These decks usually have cards that either turn themselves into more cards or can deal with multiple cards at once. Caretaker's Talent and Dimir Demon's decks are built around this philosophy. They use board vibes such as Sunfall and Deadly Cover-Up, and start drawing extra cards with Caretaker's Talent and Unholy Onyx, until they can finish the game with either Overlord of the Mistmoor or a Doomsday Excruciator and Jace the Perfected Mind combo. But if you can't stop your opponent from assembling their win condition, you might be in trouble, because those kind of decks usually run even stronger yet hard to assemble finishers. If you believe you can win, or at least gain the control of the game the moment you establish your win condition, you are the assembler in that matchup. Assemblers usually build their decks around really greedy payoff cards that can generate huge advantages. Flat color combo players build their decks around the card Valley Flat Color, which allows you to untap certain creature types and give them +1/+1 whenever you cast a non-creature spell. So, once they have a bunch of red tokens alongside Enduring Vitality, they can go infinite. Another example could be Insidious Roots deck. They build their deck around Insidious Roots, which creates a 0/1 plant token, and add +1/+1 to each of those tokens whenever a card leaves your graveyard. Not only that, it allows you to tap your creature tokens for mana. If you build your deck around cards that can remove themselves or other cards from your graveyard, you can build a massive army, which would put your opponent into a position of both being the aggressor and the delayer. So what does that look like? Decks that prefer to take both the Aggressor and the Layer role deploys a low mana creature that can take the game on their own. Then focus on stopping or at least slowing their opponent from assembling their combo until they win. Azorius, Oculus, and Sultai Tempo decks are the decks that usually wanna play both the Aggressor and the Layer roles. They wanna play their Abhorrent Oculus, Haunted Vision, Tolarian Terror, or Edimur Crab as fast as possible. So they plan ways to cheat them by either discarding their Oculus or Vision into their graveyard, then reanimating them with cards like Helping Hand, or fill their graveyard with instants and sorceries by using cards like Cash Grab, so they can lower the costs of Tolarian Terror or Edimur Crab. Once they can cheaply play those cards, they can use their remaining mana for interaction cards like Unsummon or Phantom Interference. But what happens if they can match your speed while establishing their own setup? To answer that question, we have to talk about aggressive assembler decks. These decks are the decks that usually rely on the synergies between their aggressive cards. That way they can still put pressure while assembling a stronger payoff combo. Decks like Jeskai Convoke and Esper Self-Bounce are masters of this style. In Jeskai Convoke, every creature you play will help you attack your opponent and also enable cards like Knight Errand of Eos, which uses them as Convoke fodder to add more creatures to your hand. Then Immodane's Recruiter can give them haste and +1 power, so you can swing for a big hit. Esper Self-Bounce on the other hand build around cheap permanents that has entered the battlefield effects, like Hopeless Nightmare and Storm Chaser's Talent. Then combine them with powerful cards like Nurturing Pixie and Fear of Isolation, which forces you to return one of your own permanents to your hand, so you can start reusing those permanents that puts pressure on your opponent again to dominate the early game. But if you believe you can survive these kind of combos, maybe you should try decks that are focused on delaying the game until they assemble enough hitting power. These decks usually wanna slowly assemble their win condition while slowing or stopping their opponent's strategy. Domain decks wanna accelerate their mana production by playing cards like Overlord of the Huntwoods, so they can play cards like Atraxa or Zur, which can turn all those extra mana production into an easy win. But until they assemble that, they can use cards like Leyline Binding and Sunfall to stop their opponent. Another way of assembling these kind of slow win conditions is cheating them with reanimation spells. This kind of decks wanna put their big mana creatures into their graveyards by using cards like Fellagi Archaeologist, which can be a decent early game blocker while milling your own deck, Bitter Triumph, which can kill a creature by discarding a card, or Refute, which allows you to draw a card if you counter a spell and discard another card. Then you can cheat in these 7, 8, 9 mana creatures into play in turn 3 or 4 by using spells like Skirming Emergence or Zombify. Now, not every deck should focus on a specific role. Some decks build it themselves to fit in every role that their enemies suck at. Midrange decks can usually play all 3 roles depending on their matchup. The mere midrange deck can apply pressure by using Fairy Mastermind and Kaito, slow the game by using Go for the Throat and Spell Stutter, or combine their flyers with Enduring Curiosity to turn each attack into a card draw. Golgari midrange on the other hand can use their Mosswood Red Knight or Preacher of the Schism to attack, use Gilissa's Sunslayer and Gix's command to mess with their opponent's play, or use an Innkeeper's Talent and Vraska Betrayal Sting combo to finish the game. Unlike other types of decks, midrange decks don't struggle with any of these styles, yet can't force their own play style, which means they require a lot more understanding of the metagame. But how about if we are both playing the same deck? Then you choose your role based on the cards you draw and the cards your opponent plays. Because literally every deck can play every role. It's just some roles are less likely to occur for certain decks. If you are playing a Jeskai Convoke deck, you wanna be the Aggressor and the Assembler. Yet if you match up against a mono-red deck, which is much faster than you should play the Delayer and the Assembler role instead. Or maybe in the same matchup, you draw a really aggressive hand that can flood the board in turn 4 and play an Immodane's Recruiter to finish the game, while your mono-red opponent only drew burn spells like Burst Lightning and Torch the Tower. That means they have to play the Delayer role while you get to play the Aggressor. So you should be aware of the opportunities and decide your role based on the current situation. Once you figure out your role in that matchup, now we can start planning our strategy. Every play starts with an observation. If your opponent is out of cards, it might be a great time to make a move. Then you have to set up your play by playing the cards that will enable your win condition. After that, you play your win condition to turn the game around. But unless you are finishing the game, you would be just trading resources. So try to hit as hard as possible to have more card, board, life or tempo advantage. After that, you stabilize yourself so your opponent doesn't punish you with their next card draw. Finally, finish your play cycle by reconsidering your current position. Then you repeat this cycle until your opponent can't trade any more resources, which means they will lose the game. But what if your opponent acted quickly and you are the one on the receiving end? That means you are in the survival mode and you should try to stop them by using as little advantage trade as possible. Once their cycle has finished, you will be back to your step 5 where you will have to stabilize. Then you got to try your chance again. Now, every format in the Magic the Gathering has an expected speed for this game loop. We as players wanna make any of these 6 steps as short and rewarding as possible. If we succeed in creating a deck that can consistently achieve that, we call it a meta deck. And if we overdo it, that deck or certain problematic cards in that deck gets a ban. So as long as you can figure out your role correctly in the moment, you can make successful plays. And if you can make successful plays, you can win every matchup. Now if you enjoyed this video and want more people to see it, please drop down a like. But if you say this video isn't enough for you, and you want me to make another video for you, I will start a subscription goal. Once I get exactly 1 subscriber, I will be making another video. On that video, I will be talking about deck archetypes and the optimal ways of interacting with the game. But until then, you can watch this next video where I talk about how you can beat better players.